So here are some of the most venomous surf destinations on Earth, from annoying little stingers to some of the deadliest marine creatures in the world. Australia is likely the first place that comes to mind when you think of venomous sea creatures and, well, dangerous wildlife in general. But because the country is so enormous, how likely you are to encounter them really depends on where you are. Now, one of the most common critters in this part of the world is the blue bottle jellyfish. Now, while they're rarely deadly, they're just really annoying. These jellyfish sting pretty bad and they leave these sort of blue tentacles on your skin. So these jellyfish are really common, particularly during onshore winds in summertime. I've only ever been stung once by one up in Noosa, and some of the tentacles just got wrapped around like my left forearm. And it stung like hell. It was super painful and I'd never experienced it before. So apart from using vinegar to treat it, there's not really a lot you can do to avoid blue bottles apart from not surfing in like onshore summery conditions. Now these jellyfish are found in Queensland, New South Wales, kind of everywhere along the east coast. But further north in Australia is where you get the way deadlier stuff. This is where you get the irukandji and box jellyfish. And generally where these jellyfish are found, you're not really surfing at this part of coast, although you can surf there sometimes. And a lot of beaches in this part of Australia are actually closed permanently because of these jellyfish. At a lot of beaches on the east coast of Australia, you'll encounter stingrays. Now stingrays, they're pretty like docile creatures and they're not going to attack you on purpose. They're not aggressive, but quite often in the shallows of like the open beaches, you'll see them just swimming along. But rather annoyingly, they do swim in the shallows. So quite often you get injuries where people have stepped on them and they get stung on the foot or the ankle. And this is just their sort of defense mechanism, you know, if they're getting stepped on. But if you do get stung by a stingray, you want to soak the wound in hot water and get medical attention straight away. So while a sting in the foot or the ankle is not going to kill you, they can kill you if you get stung sort of around the chest or stomach area, which is what famously killed one of Australia's most iconic figures. So over to Fiji now, and this is where sort of the most recent and most famous cases of a surfer actually being stung by a deadly jellyfish occurred. Now, a surfer from Australia paddled out at Cloudbreak when suddenly he felt what he described as burning hot oil over his arm. So the boat crew rushed him to hospital over in Nandi, and thankfully he was okay. And he actually came into contact with a box jellyfish, which are one of the most deadly marine creatures in the entire world. You know, these jellyfish have such powerful venom that it takes only a few minutes for it to spread around your system, and it can cause obviously severe pain, cardiac arrest, and even death within a few minutes. If you come into contact with one of these, you need medical care urgently. You know, this time this guy was pretty lucky. As is the theme with many like tropical surf destinations, Indonesia has so many different types of things that are stingy and venomous throughout its thousands of islands. You often see sea snakes or kraits throughout Indonesia. If you've ever been to Sumbawa or just paddled out at any of the reef breaks around Indo, you quite often see these pretty small, like black and white sea snakes. You know, they look pretty concerning and pretty scary, but generally they're not threatening and don't often attack humans. I don't know how true this is, but someone told me once that they're only venomous if they bite you between the fingers or between the toes. I don't really know how they would end up doing that, but apparently that's where your skin's soft enough so that they can bite through it. Otherwise you'll be okay. Please don't take that information like too literally though. But yeah, if you see one, obviously just try not to touch it. You know, blue-ringed octopus are also found throughout Indonesia, and you know, it's one of the deadliest sea creatures on Earth. I don't know how likely you are to encounter one of those while you're surfing though, but they're really gnarly, and again, it's a venomous creature with enough venom to kill you. But most commonly in Indonesia, and anyone who's been to Indo will have experienced this, the most venomous thing that you're gonna encounter are sea lice. Now, I use the term venomous pretty lightly here because, you know, sea lice aren't going to kill you, it's more of an annoyance. So sea lice don't actually bite, but when they get pressed up against something, for example, if they get trapped sort of between your boardies or like bikini, they release these stinging cells, which is quite often why you get that rash and sort of stingy itch around where you've got your boardies on. So sea lice, obviously super annoying. I don't know what makes them appear in certain places. You know, sometimes you have surfs where there's loads of them and you can't get them off you, and sometimes they're just not a problem. So this one will probably come as a surprise because generally you don't associate it with having deadly or even like stingy marine creatures. But across western facing Europe, jellyfish are actually super common, and Portuguese man-o'-war are often seen off the coast of this part of the world. And this is quite common because of the presence of the Gulf Stream, which brings warm water and air from the Caribbean to Western Europe. And with that current, often legions, so up to thousands of Portuguese man-of-war travel through that current and end up on the beaches of Europe. Now, interestingly, the jellyfish doesn't originate from Portugal. It actually gets its name from an 18th century Portuguese sailing vessel, of which the jellyfish's back kind of resembles. They have these like super long venomous tentacles, you know, they look scary if you've ever seen them washed up on the beach. And while they can kill you, fatalities are pretty rare. Now, interestingly, we actually had loads of Portuguese man-o'-war wash up over in the UK a couple of years ago, so loads of the beaches were closed and there was literally hundreds on my local beach, so no one was surfing for a few days after a period of onshores. We surf quite a lot of beach breaks as well, so weaver fish can be a problem, which are basically like these little fish that sit under the sand, and they've got these little spiky spines on their back, so they sit under the surface like that with the spine sticking out. So yeah, when you step on it, it stabs you basically. We actually have them in the UK as well, and during summer it's actually a pretty big problem. So quite a lot of crew teaching surfing, they often wear boots to avoid this. If you get stung by a weaver fish, you basically it usually won't leave a spike in you, it'll just leave kind of a little like needle poke. It'll just feel a bit sore, and the way to get rid of it is basically put your foot in hot water, like as hot as you can bear it. And after sort of 10-15 minutes of doing that, it breaks down the poison, and yeah, you'll be fine basically. Another tropical surf destination, you know, it's one of those places that you associate with paradise, but like with all those places, there are a lot of venomous, annoying things present. So for the Maldives, we're going to talk about fire coral. Now, fire coral is prominent throughout the Maldives. So fire coral is basically normal coral, but with these tiny little translucent hairs sticking out all over it. So coming into contact with fire coral, quite often it'll just give you this quite intense burning sensation, you know, kind of an itchy rash, and in some cases allergic reactions. So, you know, quite often if you're surfing these like shallow reef breaks, if it's got a shallow end section or where you paddle out, you've got to walk over reef. That's where reef boots can come in handy, because, you know, there's nothing worse than getting a bit of fire coral in your foot. The reefs throughout the Maldives are also littered with sea urchins, which are technically venomous, but not venomous in like the traditional sense, you know, where it's not going to sting you if you come into contact directly with it. It's more a case of getting a spike into your foot. And the problem with sea urchins is obviously if you step on spikes with that much force, they go into you and then obviously break off inside you. I don't think anyone's been on a tropical surf trip and not come in contact with a sea urchin, you know. When you're walking across a reef, sometimes you can't really avoid it, but they quite often like to hide in sort of holes and crevices. So when you're walking, you obviously want to try and walk on like the tops of the reef where they're less likely to be. And obviously if they break off inside you, you've got to kind of pull them out with tweezers, or in really severe cases get medical attention, because in tropical countries like Maldives, Fiji, if they get stuck inside you and get infected, you know the story then, you know, you're missing like days or even like the rest of your surf trip. So box jellyfish are common in Hawaii as well. From my research online, apparently these types of jellyfish are common a few days after a full moon, which is pretty interesting. And apparently they're more common on Oahu's south-facing shores. But yeah, like a lot of tropical surf destinations, you know, Hawaii, it's got lots of reef breaks, but it's not necessarily always live reef like you have in Indonesia or Fiji. You know, it's quite often like dead volcanic rock. But there are loads of other things found here. Portuguese man-o'-war are quite common throughout Hawaii. Stingrays, sea lice, sea snakes, urchins, all of those kind of things. They're fairly common throughout Hawaii. If any of you guys are from there or you live there, let me know if there's any other like weird stingy things that you have or that are super annoying. So Central America is no surprise, you know, there's so many different stinging things here. Stingrays, blue bottles, all that kind of stuff. I don't think there's much of a problem with sharks. Obviously crocodiles are present in the area. And yeah, stingrays quite common, again, like in Australia, swimming in the shallows as well. I guess the scarier thing about being in any of the Central American countries is that you might be a bit further away from like good medical care, whereas if it happens in Australia, you've got that quite readily available in a lot of the populated coastal areas. Central America is a little bit of a different story. To be honest, I'd be more worried about crocodiles in this part of the world. So yeah, that is a bit of a list of venomous surf destinations. Obviously there's like way more places. If a destination has all of like the ingredients of the right temperature and right sort of marine environment, these things can be found there. And to be honest, it's fairly rare that you're going to encounter some of these creatures, especially the more deadly ones, but it's not impossible. So if you're surfing in some of these destinations, as proven in Fiji a few weeks ago, it is possible for you to get stung or encounter some of these. Some of like the smaller ones like sea lice and coral, they're a lot more common. Box jellyfish not so much, but I guess it's kind of like with sharks, you know, we're always entering these environments where these things are present, so you can never totally rule it out despite how rare it might be. Yeah, let me know of any of your guys' experiences with any of these things or other things that you've encountered around the world, you know, however weird it might be, or if you've had any experiences with some of these like deadly things and live to tell the tale. I'd love to hear your stories, so please let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, thanks for the support as always. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next episode.